Starving fighting dog finds an abandoned baby. What happens next will break your heart. A raw, bitter wind cut through the deserted back streets of Chicago on a moonless winter night. Beneath a flickering street lamp, a starved and scarred pit bull known only as Diesel staggered through the silent darkness. Used for illegal dog fights and then cast aside, Diesel was searching for a morsel of food, or even just a hint of kindness. That's when he heard something, an infant's faint cry. Half frozen and desperate, the dog followed the sound. What Diesel discovered in that forgotten alley would unravel the cruelties he'd endured and ignite a mercy he never knew he possessed. And what happened next would break your heart. Diesel had once been prized for his strength and aggression in an underground fighting ring. Night after night, he was thrown into a makeshift arena, forced to battle other dogs for a sick kind of entertainment. Over time, injuries marred his charcoal gray fur with a patchwork of scars. His right ear bore a ragged tear. His muzzle was pitted with old bite wounds. With each forced fight, Diesel's spirit eroded. He was never a killer at heart, only a dog desperate for approval from the wrong hands. When Diesel finally lost one fight too many, his captors deemed him worthless. Instead of shooting him, an act that had befallen many others, they dumped him on the freezing streets. Perhaps they thought the harsh Chicago winter would finish him off more cheaply. With no food, no shelter, and no hope, Diesel drifted from alley to alley. He was too weak to stand his ground among strays scavenging for scraps, so he wandered deeper into the city's abandoned industrial blocks, where even fewer resources existed. The night he found the baby, Diesel's paws left faint tracks in the powdery snow. His ribs showed starkly under his thin coat. His breath came out in ragged plumes, and his belly snarled in hunger. Every step seemed to bring him closer to collapse. Yet some spark of life still glowed in his weary eyes, a dim memory of the gentle voice of a child who once whispered, "Good boy," through the chain-link fence of that dog-fighting yard. Maybe that memory was all that kept him moving forward. Then, amid the howling wind, his ears twitched at a sound too incongruous to ignore. A soft whimper, high-pitched and plaintive. Diesel paused, heart pounding. Curiosity vied with caution. The whimper came again, more desperate. He followed the noise down a narrow alley lined with broken glass and trash. His nose caught a scent that was fragile and new. With trembling limbs, Diesel turned a corner and saw a small bundle at the base of a rusted dumpster. In the darkness, it took him a moment to realize what lay before him. An infant wrapped in a thin, dirty towel, face reddened from the cold. The baby's tiny fists flailed weakly, as though fighting for a life that was moments from slipping away. Diesel's battered heart lurched at the sight. The child's eyes, barely open, locked onto him with a plea no words could express. Despite his own suffering, Diesel felt an unexplainable urgency. He was no longer just a starved fighter. He was something more, something that even his abusers couldn't strip away, a protector. The baby's cries were faint but persistent, a soft keening that called Diesel closer. He crept nearer, sniffing the cold air. The scent of human infant, milk, powder, that indescribable newborn smell, combined with the acrid stench of garbage. Diesel's instincts warred inside him. Flight or concern. Normally any dog in Diesel's condition would keep walking, drawn by hunger and fear, but something within him compelled him to stay. Carefully he nudged the towel with his nose, revealing more of the baby's fragile form. The child's skin was frigid to the touch. Diesel sensed the baby was in grave danger from exposure. A small hand reached out blindly, grazing Diesel's scarred muzzle. A wave of unexpected emotion swept through him. He lowered his body beside the baby, enveloping it with what little warmth he possessed. Time stretched thin under that street lamp's weak glow. Diesel's mind churned in a haze of exhaustion, but he knew the baby's condition was critical. If no one found them, they would both perish in the cold Chicago night. With a raspy whine, Diesel rose on shaking legs and looked around, ears perked. The child let out another helpless cry. As though some guardian force guided him, Diesel began to bark. Short, feeble sounds, but urgent enough to echo against the abandoned walls. Even that simple act drained him. He barked again, then again. Silence pressed in from every corner. No one came. Panic clawed at Diesel, a sensation akin to the terror he felt in the fighting ring, but he refused to abandon the bundle. He circled the baby, stepping gingerly over ice patches. Sensing no immediate solution, Diesel settled again, curling his body around the infant. A few more minutes passed in that precarious vigil. The baby's cries grew softer, heartbreakingly so, as if life's cord was slipping. Desperate, Diesel mustered another series of barks, each one echoing off the brick. This time, in the distance, a door slammed. A voice called out, "Hello? Someone out there?" Diesel's ears twitched at the sound of footsteps crunching on ice. Fear raked through him, but a fiercer instinct, the need to save the child, kept him rooted. Then a figure appeared at the mouth of the alley. The silhouette hesitated, uncertain in the gloom. Diesel growled, a protective rumble, but did not leave the baby's side. "Who's there?" the person called. A flashlight beam darted across the alley, landing on Diesel's scarred frame. The man gasped, taking a step back at the sight of a battered pit bull with a baby. Diesel lifted his head, letting out a soft whine as if to say, "Please help." The flashlight trembled as the man approached. He knelt, eyes wide. "Oh my God," he breathed, seeing the baby's bluish lips. He glanced at Diesel's gaunt ribs, the wounds still fresh around his face. "Holy, you're both in trouble." In that moment, Diesel did something extraordinary. He lifted his paw and rested it gently on the baby's towel, as though showing the man, "This child is yours to save now." Without further hesitation, the man removed his own jacket and wrapped it around the baby, struggling for cell phone reception. Over the howling wind, Diesel heard frantic words. "I found a baby, near the corner of Fulton and Dahman. Yes, an abandoned baby. Yes, there's a dog. No, I think it's trying to help." As the sirens began to wail in the distance, Diesel slumped to the ground, relief washing over him in a dizzying wave. He'd done what he could, his vision blurred. The last thing he remembered was the man's anxious shout, "Stay with me, buddy, stay with me," before the darkness swallowed him whole. Diesel awoke in a swirl of unnatural brightness. For a few disoriented seconds, he thought he was back under the glaring floodlights of a fighting pit. But when he tried to stand, a dull ache throbbed in his front leg, bandaged and immobilized. The walls around him were white, the floors clean and polished. The air smelled of antiseptic instead of blood and filth. He was in some kind of veterinary clinic, though which one he couldn't know. An IV tube ran into his foreleg, delivering fluids. A plastic cone circled his head, preventing him from licking his wounds. Panic seized him initially. He pawed at the cage bars, letting out a distressed bark. But then he heard a gentle voice, soft, reassuring. "Shh, it's okay, big guy," said a woman wearing light blue scrubs. She crouched at Diesel's kennel, her expression one of compassion and wonder. Her name tag read, "Ava Veterinary Technician." "You're safe here. You saved that baby's life, you know. We're gonna take good care of you." Though Diesel couldn't understand her words, the warmth in her tone soothed him. He watched her carefully as she opened the cage door a crack, offering her hand for him to sniff. The adrenaline still coursed in his veins, but some small part of him, perhaps the same part that refused to leave the baby, sensed he could trust her. Ava moved slowly, mindful of Diesel's injuries. Gently, she scratched behind his torn ear, a gesture that made him sigh. "We removed some parasites, stitched up a few bite wounds," she explained, as if Diesel could follow. "You were severely underweight, so we've started you on a special diet. It's going to be a long road, but you'll pull through." In the background, Diesel could hear muted voices and the hum of machinery. Occasionally, a door would open, letting in a swirl of cold air. He flinched at any loud noise, memories of violence still fresh. Yet no one here raised a fist or shouted. Instead, they handled him with the gentleness he'd never known. Across town, at Ann and Robert H. Lurie Children's Hospital of Chicago, a name Diesel wouldn't recognize, The baby he had rescued was receiving urgent care. The infant, dubbed Baby Hope by the nurses, struggled against hypothermia and possible complications from abandonment. The doctors stabilized her vitals, warming her tiny body with heated blankets. When asked if they knew anything about the child's parents, the paramedics could only say she'd been found alone with a pit bull. Media outlets caught wind of the story. "Starved fighting dog saves abandoned baby" headlines quickly went viral. Unaware of the mounting attention, Diesel lay on his padded bed in the clinic, drifting in and out of fitful sleep. Ava and the other staff monitored him closely, ensuring he had enough nourishment and medication. As the hours ticked by, Diesel's condition improved, though the emotional scars ran just as deep as the physical ones. In that fragile space of healing, Diesel's fate hung in the balance. Would he be deemed too dangerous, too broken and lost forever? Or could this dog, who risked everything to save a child, find a second chance? 3 days after the rescue, Diesel was transferred to a local animal shelter that specialized in rehabilitation. The staff at Paws and Claws Rescue Center welcomed him gingerly. They'd dealt with abused animals before, but few had survived the brutal world of dogfighting, let alone performed an act so heroic. The center's director, a stout woman named Clarissa, personally oversaw Diesel's arrival. Clarissa had read the news stories about the hero dog, and part of her hoped Diesel's fame might help him get adopted one day. But first he would need time. Time to heal. Time to learn that not all humans raised hands to harm him. She assigned him a private kennel in a quieter wing of the facility, away from the noisy adult dogs who barked incessantly at visitors. She posted a sign, "Recovery in progress, handled with care." Meanwhile, the baby's story captured hearts across the city. Donations poured in for the infant's medical care. People left flowers and plush toys in the hospital lobby. News anchors relayed updates. Baby Hope was stable, but doctors were still monitoring for any complications. Social workers began the complicated process of searching for the child's family. If no relatives were found, she would eventually be placed in the foster system. One evening, as Clarissa was finishing up her shift, a knock sounded on the shelter's glass door. She peered outside, seeing a man in a heavy coat, his cheeks pink from the freezing air. He introduced himself as Officer Daniel Park, a police officer who had been one of the first responders the night Diesel and the baby were found. Daniel held a paper bag in one hand. "I brought some treats," he said, sheepishly showing the bag of gourmet dog biscuits. I wanted to see how the dog was doing, the one who saved the baby." Clarissa offered a small smile, unlocking the door. "Come on in. You're here after hours, but I can make an exception." Daniel glanced around the empty reception area, noticing the volunteer recruitment posters on the walls. Photos of rescued animals lined a bulletin board labeled "Success Stories." He followed Clarissa down a corridor lit by dim overhead bulbs to Diesel's kennel. In the soft glow, Diesel lay on a bed of blankets, head resting on his paws. The dog's scars were more visible up close, testaments to the life he'd endured. Upon hearing footsteps, Diesel stood, tail tucked yet curious. He recognized Daniel's scent from that night in the alley, though not as intimately as the man who initially found them. Daniel crouched to Diesel's level. "Hey, buddy," he murmured. "You doing better?" Diesel sniffed the air, remembering faint echoes of sirens and the swirl of lights from that terrifying night. Then, surprising both Daniel and Clarissa, Diesel nuzzled Daniel's hand through the kennel bars, tentative but not hostile. Clarissa folded her arms, touched by the scene. "He's got a long way to go, but he's showing signs of trust. Hard to believe he was forced to fight." Daniel nodded, eyes lingering on Diesel. No creature should have to go through that. And that baby, she's still in the hospital. The docs say she'll pull through thanks to him. He paused. "You think there's any chance Diesel could see her again someday? I know it's not typical, but he kind of saved her life." Clarissa's eyebrows rose. "That depends on the hospital's policies, the foster system, a lot of red tape. Right now, his priority is recovering, just like hers." Daniel pressed his palm gently to the kennel. Diesel licked at the steel bars. For a moment, the hush of the shelter enveloped them. In that silent exchange, a seed was planted, one that would grow into something neither Diesel nor the baby's caregivers could ever have predicted. Days turned to weeks, and Diesel's story continued to inspire. Donations streamed in to support Paws and Claw's Rescue Center. Strangers from across the country offered to adopt the hero dog. Clarissa, however, remained cautious. Diesel needed the right home, someone patient, experienced with traumatized animals, and truly committed to his rehabilitation. She was not about to release him to just anyone, especially those who might exploit his media popularity. Meanwhile, baby Hope recovered steadily. Nurses at Anne and Robert H. Lurie Children's Hospital took turns rocking her in the neonatal unit. Although she was improving physically, the question of her future loomed large. With no relatives coming forward and no identifying documents left at the scene, social workers prepared to place her in a foster home as soon as she was deemed healthy enough. All the while, Diesel advanced in his training. Clarissa enlisted the help of a skilled animal behaviorist named Richard to address Diesel's fears and reactivity. In their first few sessions, Diesel cowered at every raised hand, every sharp sound. Richard used gentle praise and positive reinforcement techniques, treats, soft words, slow movements. Over time, Diesel began to wag his tail in greeting when Richard approached. The deep lines of worry in Diesel's eyes softened. One chilly afternoon, as Diesel was going through a basic obedience drill, learning to sit and stay, Daniel Park appeared again at the shelter door. It had become a routine for him to drop by whenever he had a spare moment. Perhaps he felt a special bond with Diesel, or perhaps the baby's plight weighed on him, driving him to see how her savior fared. He watched Diesel from the observation window as the dog tried to follow Richard's commands. The pit bull's tail wiggled uncertainly when he succeeded and was rewarded with a treat. Daniel smiled to himself, remembering how Diesel once stood guard over that freezing infant. This battered, misunderstood dog had such a capacity for compassion. In a moment of introspection, Daniel realized that Diesel's journey was stirring something deeper in his own heart. During a break, Daniel approached Clarissa. "How's Diesel doing overall?" he asked. Clarissa brushed a stray lock of hair from her face. "Better than we could have hoped. He's responding well to training, and his medical reports are positive. We just want to ensure he goes to the right home. No second chances if we get it wrong." Daniel's gaze slid to Diesel, who was lapping from a water bowl. "That's admirable. He deserves the best. If I ever wanted to foster him, is that even an option?" Clarissa studied him for a moment. Daniel was in his early 30s, single, with a stable job as a police officer. He had a quiet kindness about him. Yet fostering a dog like Diesel was not for the faint of heart. "It's not impossible," she said slowly. "But we'll need to do a thorough evaluation. A home check, a fostering application, plus we need to be sure you have the time to handle any issues that come up." Daniel nodded. "I understand. I live alone, but I work regular hours. I'm no stranger to discipline or structure, and something about Diesel just gets to me." Clarissa smiled gently. "Let's see how Diesel feels about that. We always say around here, the dog chooses the person." And so began a new chapter in Diesel's life. Daniel started spending more time with him, joining Richard in training sessions. Diesel, for his part, displayed a surprising eagerness to connect with Daniel. He recognized the officer's scent, his voice. More than that, Diesel sensed the genuine warmth in Daniel's approach. No fear, no cruelty, just a willingness to understand. Though the alliance between man and dog was building, both remained haunted by the same question. What of baby Hope? The fragile human Diesel had once risked his life for. She was out there in a hospital crib, forging her own path toward an uncertain future. Baby Hope's condition had stabilized enough that the hospital planned to release her soon into the care of the Illinois Department of Children and Family Services. A dedicated social worker named Teresa had been working tirelessly to ensure the baby would have a safe foster placement. Yet the waiting list for fosters was long, and many were reluctant to take in a newborn with potential medical complications. All this time, Diesel's story remained intertwined with hers in the public eye. Local news outlets ran follow-up pieces. Hero dog in training, baby Hope ready for foster care. Strangers on social media wrote heartfelt messages, praising Diesel's courage and lamenting the cruelty that led him to that alley in the first place. One crisp morning, as Clarissa was reviewing Diesel's file, her phone buzzed. It was a call from the hospital staff. Her eyebrows rose. "Yes, this is Clarissa at Paws and Claws Rescue," she said politely. A few moments later, her posture straightened. "Baby Hope?" She listened intently, face growing more animated. "Sure, we could arrange that." After hanging up, Clarissa hurried to find Daniel, who had come by to walk Diesel. He was just returning from the yard, Diesel padding loyally at his side. At the sight of Clarissa's expression, Daniel's heart quickened. "Something wrong?" Clarissa shook her head, eyes bright. "Not wrong, maybe wonderful. The hospital staff reached out. They're organizing a small press piece about Baby Hope's recovery and want to involve Diesel. The doctors believe it might generate more interest in fostering or adopting the baby, as well as Diesel. They specifically asked if we'd bring Diesel over for a brief meetup under supervision with the baby." Daniel's jaw dropped slightly. "You mean Diesel and Baby Hope together again?" "That's right, it's unorthodox. But they think it could show potential foster families or adoptive parents the incredible bond that sparked this whole story. They want to demonstrate that Baby Hope is a fighter, and that Diesel is, despite his background, capable of incredible compassion." A swirl of emotion gripped Daniel. He glanced at Diesel, who was cocking his head as if sensing the excitement. "Do you think he's ready for that? The hospital environment, the cameras, all the new stimuli?" Clarissa breathed deeply. "It's a risk, but we'd keep it controlled. Probably a short session in a private room. If Diesel gets anxious, we'll pull back immediately." Without hesitation, Daniel nodded. He saved her life once. He deserves a chance to see she's all right. Thus, the stage was set for Diesel's reintroduction to Baby Hope, a meeting both heartwarming and fraught with uncertainty. On the day of the hospital visit, Daniel arrived at Paws and Claws Rescue Center to pick up Diesel. Clarissa had a special harness ready, embroidered with the word "rescue" in bright lettering. Diesel wore it, along with a soft muzzle they decided to use as a precaution in a busy public place. Though Diesel had shown no signs of aggression since his rescue, the memory of his forced fighting days urged everyone to be extra cautious. As they drove through Chicago's congested streets, Diesel lay in the back seat, occasionally poking his head between the front seats to rest against Daniel's shoulder. A pang of empathy struck Daniel, recalling how Diesel once roamed these same roads, abandoned. "You're doing good, buddy," he murmured, patting the dog's scarred head. At Anne and Robert H. Lurie Children's Hospital, security led them through a less crowded entrance, away from the main bustle of patients and families. A few reporters had gathered for the scheduled press moment, their cameras poised. Diesel tensed at the unfamiliar environment, nose twitching at the antiseptic smells, ears flattening at the echo of distant monitors and bustling staff. Daniel stroked Diesel's side. "It's okay. I'm here." A staff member guided them to a small conference room that had been sanitized and prepared. Inside, Baby Hope lay in a bassinet, wearing a pink onesie with a tiny heart embroidered on the chest. A nurse hovered protectively. At the sight of Diesel and Daniel, the nurse stepped back to allow them space, though she watched with vigilance. Teresa, the social worker, was also present, fiddling nervously with her notebook. Diesel paused at the threshold, senses overloaded. Then he caught the baby's scent, a subtle, precious fragrance that unlocked a memory deep within him. A freezing alley, the desperate cry of a child, his own trembling body shielding her from the cold. His tail lowered, but he took cautious steps forward. Baby Hope stirred, opening her eyes. The nurse lifted her gently, bringing the baby closer. Diesel sniffed the air, letting out a faint whine that was more curiosity than fear. Daniel loosened his grip on the leash, but just enough to let Diesel approach. The cameras flashed, and Diesel winced at the sudden bright lights edging backward. Daniel quickly signaled for the reporters to keep their distance. Slowly, the nurse lowered baby Hope so her tiny hand could graze Diesel's muzzle through the soft muzzle guard. Diesel's eyes, clouded with old pain, flickered with something new, a gentle recognition. He offered the baby a hesitant lick through the mesh, whining softly as if to say, "I remember you. I'm glad you're safe." The nurse's eyes glistened with tears. Teresa placed a hand over her heart. The photographers, who had found themselves momentarily silenced by the poignant scene, began taking pictures again, this time with more reverence. But amid this tender reunion, ghosts of Diesel's past lingered. The dog was shaking slightly, triggered by the onslaught of new stimuli. Daniel and Clarissa both recognized the signs. With a quiet nod to each other, they indicated it was time to wrap up the session. Diesel had made his contact. Baby Hope had experienced the presence of her rescuer. That was enough for now. Under calmer lighting, Teresa approached Daniel and Clarissa. "Thank you," she whispered. "This footage, it'll help us in so many ways, not just for her or Diesel, but for all the children and animals who need a voice." Her smile was bittersweet, overshadowed by the reality that baby Hope still had no permanent family lined up. As Diesel and Daniel left the room, they felt the weight of a world that could cast aside an innocent dog and a helpless child. Yet they also felt hope, bolstered by the knowledge that just maybe, love could be found for both. In the weeks that followed, the hospital visit footage circulated widely on social media and local news. Viewers were captivated by the quiet bravery of a scarred pit bull and the fragile baby who clutched his muzzle with tiny fingers. Calls flooded Paws and Claws Rescue Center, and the social worker's office received inquiries about baby Hope. The story became a symbol of resilience. If a dog once used for violence could show compassion, perhaps there was hope for every lost soul. During this time, Daniel moved forward with fostering Diesel. After multiple home visits and thorough assessments, Clarissa deemed Daniel's small, tidy apartment suitable. Diesel had a dedicated sleeping corner, plenty of chew toys, and a schedule that included daily walks, training sessions, and visits to the vet for ongoing treatments. At first, Diesel paced nervously, adjusting to the unfamiliar spaces. The hum of the refrigerator startled him, and the flush of the toilet made him jump, but Daniel patiently guided him, rewarding calm behavior with gentle praise. In a quiet moment one evening, Daniel stretched out on the couch, Diesel lying at his feet. The hush of the apartment seemed almost foreign after years of police shifts and single living. Daniel's thoughts drifted to baby Hope, her uncertain future in the foster system. He had never entertained the notion of fatherhood, not like this. But each time he thought of her, a strange warmth flickered in his chest. He glanced at Diesel's sleeping form and murmured, "We did what we could, right, buddy?" Diesel's ears twitched at the sound of Daniel's voice, but he remained curled in contented sleep. A single question hovered in Daniel's mind. Could a single man, juggling a demanding job and a traumatized rescue dog, dare to foster a child? The thought seemed outlandish. Yet something about Diesel's quiet transformation reminded Daniel that the impossible often became possible through love and perseverance. As days turned into a month, Diesel grew more confident in Daniel's home. He wagged his tail excitedly when Daniel returned from a shift, no longer cowering at the sound of the door. He learned to walk calmly on a leash around the block, ignoring passing cars and the occasional barking dog. Each small victory felt monumental, a testament to Diesel's willingness to trust. And in the midst of these domestic triumphs, the final piece of the puzzle awaited: baby Hope's placement. Teresa emailed Daniel updates more out of courtesy than expectation. She informed him that a short-term foster family had stepped up, but they were temporary, not adoptive. The baby still lacked a permanent home. Daniel read each message with a tightening in his chest. The question lingered. Should he dare to step forward? On a gray afternoon, Daniel found himself pacing the living room, Diesel watching him curiously. He had just finished a phone call with Teresa. The foster arrangement for baby Hope fell through. Her medical needs required frequent checkups, and the family hadn't anticipated the level of care involved. Now, the baby was back in transitional care at the hospital until another foster family could be found. "Diesel," Daniel said, voice thick with emotion. "I can't let her drift through the system forever. She deserves better." Diesel tilted his head as though urging Daniel to continue. Taking a deep breath, Daniel dialed Teresa's number again. He could almost hear his heart pounding as he explained what he wanted. "I know it's unorthodox for a single man with a demanding job, but I can't stop thinking about her. She and Diesel share a bond. If you and the courts would allow it, I'd like to foster baby Hope." Over the line, Teresa's stunned silence spoke volumes. Then her voice turned hopeful, yet professional. "Daniel, this is a huge step. We'll need to do a thorough evaluation of your home environment, your support network, finances, background checks. But, yes, I'll submit the paperwork if you're serious." Daniel exhaled, a mixture of relief and terror. "I'm serious." In the days that followed, the wheels of bureaucracy creaked into motion. The child welfare system demanded extensive interviews, references, and home inspections. Clarissa vouched for Daniel's character, explaining how he'd taken in Diesel, a severely traumatized pit bull, and successfully rehabilitated him so far. Daniel's superiors at the police department adjusted his schedule to accommodate childcare. Slowly, the path cleared. One sunny morning, Daniel stood at the same hospital corridor where Diesel and baby Hope had once met. This time there were no cameras or reporters, just Teresa, holding the baby swaddled in a soft pink blanket. The moment baby Hope was handed to Daniel, he felt an indescribable rush, a blend of awe, protectiveness, and love he never knew he was capable of. He brought her home to the apartment he now shared with Diesel. The dog approached cautiously, his muzzle angled downward as he gently sniffed the baby's blanket. Baby Hope peered up at him, eyes wide, issuing a soft coo. Diesel whined, tail wagging in slow arcs. In that exchange, Daniel felt the gravity of what they had all overcome. The baby, left to perish in a freezing alley. Diesel, forced into blood sport and left to starve. And Daniel, a solitary cop who never expected to be a father figure. Life was far from perfect. There were sleepless nights as the baby cried, feedings every few hours, endless forms to fill out for child services. Diesel continued with training sessions to manage his reactivity. But within the chaos, a new family was forming. Their living room echoed with the soft squeaks of a baby and the gentle padding of a dog's paws. The scars on Diesel's body and the uncertain start of baby Hope's life became testimonies to resilience rather than tragedies. In time, Daniel officially applied to adopt baby Hope. The legal process would be lengthy, but for now, he cherished the title of foster father. Diesel, too, seemed content. No longer a starved fighting dog, he was now a protective companion, always ready to lie watchfully beside the crib or rush to Daniel's side if the baby fussed. One evening, as baby Hope slept peacefully, Daniel sat on the floor with Diesel, rubbing the dog's belly. A single tear slipped down Daniel's cheek. "We did it," he whispered, voice thick with gratitude. "We saved her, and you saved me." Diesel responded by licking Daniel's hand, his eyes gentle under the glow of the living room lamp. And so, in a quiet corner of Chicago, where once only fear and abandonment reigned, love took root. A battered pit bull and an abandoned infant, each discarded by the world, found in each other a reason to persevere, forging a bond that would forever remain a testament to the indomitable spirit of hope. Thank you for accompanying us on this emotional journey of heartbreak and redemption. We witnessed Diesel, a once-starved fighting dog, defy his brutal past to protect a helpless, abandoned baby. Their incredible bond served as a beacon of hope, proving that even in the darkest alleys of life, kindness and courage can prevail. If this story moved you, if you found solace in its message of resilience, connection, and personal growth, please click the like button. Share this video with friends who need a reminder that every life, no matter how scarred, holds the power to save another. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more stories that shine light on the quiet miracles unfolding around us every day. Your support allows us to continue telling tales of love triumphing over despair. Thank you, and may this story inspire you to find hope and compassion in your own life.